I never thought my retirement would land me in the middle of $1 million conspiracy, but here I am, staring down a $25,000 fine for a house I built with my own hands on land I legally own. My name's Jack Harper, and after 25 years chasing white-collar crooks for the FBI, I figured I'd earn some peace. I bought 10 acres of untouched forest in Pine Hollow, Oregon, back in the summer of 2023, dreaming of quiet mornings with coffee, maybe some fishing in the creek running through my property, and a garden to keep me busy. The land was perfect dense pines, a clear spring, and no neighbors in sight from my front porch. I'd spent decades dismantling fraud schemes and locking up liars. This was supposed to be my escape. But trouble has a way of finding me, and it all started with a phone call that turned my quiet life upside down. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in October 2023, and I was wrestling with a set of oak cabinets for my kitchen. The house was coming together, 8 months of sweat and sawdust, every nail driven by my own hands. There's something about building something solid after years of tearing down criminals. It feels like reclaiming a piece of yourself. My phone buzzed, showing an unknown number. I answered, expecting a delivery update or maybe a wrong number. Instead, I got Margaret Voss, president of the Clearview Pines Homeowners Association, her voice dripping with the kind of authority that comes from always getting her way. "Mr. Harper," she said, like she was addressing a naughty schoolboy, "your unauthorized construction violates our community standards. You need to halt all work and meet with our architectural review board next week." I nearly dropped the phone. Clearview Pines? I never heard of them. My land was a good half-mile outside their boundaries, according to every survey. Indeed, I triple-checked before buying. "Ms. Voss," I said, keeping my tone even but firm, "my property isn't part of your HOA. You've got no jurisdiction here." There was a pause, and I could almost hear her recalculating. When she spoke again, her voice was sharper, laced with condescension. "Mr. Harper, our standards apply to any property affecting our community's aesthetic and environmental integrity. Your cabin's height, your driveway's drainage, your rustic designates, all non-compliant." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity was almost impressive. I told her I'd done my homework, that my title was clean, and hung up before she could double down. 2 days later, a certified mail carrier pulled up in a dusty pickup, handing me a thick envelope with Clearview Pines HOA stamped in pretentious gold lettering. Inside was a fine $30,000 for unauthorized construction, plus an environmental impact fee and daily penalties until I complied. I stood on my porch, staring at the papers, and something clicked. This wasn't just some overzealous busybody. The language was too slick, too calculated. I'd seen this before, schemes dressed up in official jargon to scare people into submission. My old FBI instincts kicked in, and I started digging. I called the HOA's management company, and the woman on the phone sounded like she'd been fielding complaints all day. When I explained my situation, she hesitated before admitting, "Your property isn't in our jurisdiction, sir, but Ms. Voss insists this is an internal matter." That was the first red flag. If they knew I was outside their reach, why were they playing along? Either Voss had serious pull, or there was money involved, big money. That night, I sat on my porch, sipping whiskey and staring at the faint outline of Voss's mansion through the trees. After years of chasing criminals hiding behind respectability, I knew one thing. The boldest ones always think they're untouchable. The HOA called an emergency meeting to address the Harper situation, and I decided to show up. It was held at the Clearview Pines Community Center, a glass and steel monstrosity that screamed wasted money. I parked where I could watch the crowd arrive, polished SUVs, well-dressed folks who spent more on landscaping than I did on groceries. But they moved like they were scared, glancing over their shoulders, whispering in tight clusters. Voss held court at the front, mid-40s, sharp suit, blonde hair pulled tight like her grip on power. When she saw me, her smile was pure venom. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Jack Harper," she announced. "The man who thinks he can ignore our rules and build whatever he pleases, no matter how it tanks our property values." The room turned to stare, and I felt like I had walked into a lion's den with a stake around my neck. I took a seat in the back as Voss launched into a tirade about community standards, painting my modest cabin as a threat to their pristine neighborhood. She conveniently left out that my land wasn't part of their HOA. Then she pulled out a folder thicker than a phone book, rattling off violations, height restrictions, setback rules. Even my mailbox was non-compliant. I couldn't help myself. I stood up, raising my hand. "Ms. Voss," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Can you explain how last year's $50,000 in community enhancement funds was spent? I'm curious about the details." The room froze. Voss's face flickered shock, then rage. Before she could respond, a nervous woman at the treasurer's table, Ellen Carter, spoke up. "Actually, I've noticed some irregularities in those expenses. Payments to vendors I can't verify, unclear project descriptions." The look Voss shot her could have melted steel, but the damage was done. Whispers spread, and I saw doubt ripple through the crowd. Voss doubled down, slapping me with new fines: $1, $200 for stormwater drainage issues, and $500 for my mailbox. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. My mailbox. Half a mile outside their turf? This was getting absurd. After the meeting, residents approached me, spilling their fears. A retired engineer, Tom Bradley, mentioned maintenance fees that never led to actual repairs. An older woman whispered about equipment purchases nobody could find. Ellen Carter, the treasurer, looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. I drove home, replaying her shaky voice, Voss's deflection, and the nervous energy in that room. These people weren't just annoyed, they were terrified. The next morning, I filed a public records request with the county clerk. HOAs are quasi-governmental, so their finances are fair game under state law. When I called the management company for financial statements and contracts, the rep laughed. "Ms. Voss says those are confidential," she said. I smiled into the phone. "Funny, because state law says otherwise. Want the statute number, or should I call the county attorney?" She promised to check with the board, but I wasn't holding my breath. Instead, I started digging into the enhancement payments Ellen mentioned. They all went to a company called Summit Realty Group. Round numbers. No bids, no trace. I drove to their listed address, an empty lot with a rusted "for sale" sign. No office, no nothing. Just weeds and a sinking feeling in my gut. Then I found me land wasn't just outside the HOA's reach. It sat on a mineral deposit worth millions, part of a larger vein running under the area. Voss wasn't after my cabin. She wanted my land to sell to developers. Tom stopped by that afternoon, looking grim. "Margaret's been different since her husband vanished last year," he said, sipping coffee on my porch. "Gambling debts, messy divorce." Right around then, she got obsessed with HOA finances, pushing through projects nobody can find. I showed him the Summit Realty records, and his engineer's brain kicked in. "No way those costs are legit," he said. "No visible improvements, no invoices, just money vanishing." A quick search revealed Summit was incorporated a week after Voss became treasurer, under her maiden name, Margaret Ellis. This wasn't just greed, it was a calculated scam. The next day, I spotted a white truck parked near my property line, Secure Horizons painted on the side. Two guys in uniforms were setting up cameras aimed at my house. "We're monitoring for HOA violations," one said, flashing a clipboard like it made him official. "On my land?" I asked, keeping my cool. He shrugged. "Orders from Ms. Voss." That night, I spread my evidence across my kitchen table: fake company, forged signatures, mineral rights, illegal surveillance. I was ready to call my old FBI partner, Sarah Klein, when Ellen showed up, trembling, with an envelope of financial records. "I signed checks I didn't understand," she whispered. "Now they're forging my name on transfers I never approved." The papers showed money funneled through shell companies, disappearing into untraceable accounts. Ellen said it started when a man named Victor Crane approached the HOA about development opportunities. Voss told her to sign and shut up. I looked at Ellen's scared eyes and promised to protect her. Some fights you don't choose, they choose you. I called Sarah, who ran Summit Realty through the FBI's database. "Jack, this isn't petty theft," she said. "Summit's tied to 17 HOAs across 3 states, laundering nearly $2 million in drug money." As we spoke, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. Victor Crane stepped out, suit crisp, smile colder than a winter storm. "Mr. Harper," he said, "I represent investors interested in your land. Let's talk." I invited him in, flipping on my old recording system. Victor offered 3 times what I paid for my property, waving around resort development plans. I played along, asking about Voss's role. His shoulders tensed, but he admitted she'd identified key properties. I pushed harder. This about the mineral rights. His mask slipped for a split second, knew about the deposits. Just surface development, he lied. I told him I'd think it over, and as soon as he left, I called Sarah. This just went from fraud to organized crime, she said. Be careful. The next morning, I agreed to a sting. I'd wear a wire, pretend to sell, and get Victor to spill everything. Sarah's team set up in unmarked vans, posing as utility workers. Victor arrived with 2 goons, one carrying a briefcase, the other scanning my property like a hawk. Your land's potential is higher than we thought, Victor said, smirking. Mineral deposits worth $5 million. I pressed him, and he bragged about targeting vulnerable properties, using HOAs to launder money and force sales. Then his phone buzzed. He made a coded call, and suddenly, my driveway filled with tactical vehicles. We know who you are, Harper, Victor said, his goon flashing a gun. Former agents don't just retire. My heart raced, but I heard glass shatter. FBI agents stormed in, shouting, Federal agents. Victor's crew was cuffed in seconds, his smug face crumbling as Sarah read his rights. The trial was a spectacle. Prosecutors laid out a case spanning 6 states, 47 HOAs, and $4.2 million in stolen funds, plus $8 million in laundered drug money. Victor got 18 years, Voss, 12. Ellen's testimony spared her jail time, but the emotional scars lingered. Seized assets funded real community improvements, playgrounds, lighting, transparency reforms. My cabin, once a violation, was featured in a 2024 Architectural Digest spread, praised for its eco-friendly design. Pine Hollow's new HOA board, led by Ellen, set a gold standard for accountability. I started consulting for the FBI, helping homeowners spot fraud. My quiet life was back, but now I knew some battles are worth fighting. As I sat on my deck, watching the sunset, my phone rang. A homeowner from Idaho, facing suspicious HOA fines, needed advice. I grabbed my notepad, ready to dive in. The fight never ends, does it? What would you do if your dream home became a criminal's target? Would you sell and walk away, or dig in and fight? If you've got a story like mine, drop it in the comments. I am all ears. And if this tale got your blood pumping, give it a like and subscribe for more.